From the early days of the founding of the states in the United States, small villages and towns have dotted the landscape from coast to coast. One small such town in Pennsylvania, seemingly just another Littleville, has a very famous figure of history directly involved with its existence. It's the town of Curwensville, Pennsylvania. Its location is in western Pennsylvania, about 1 hour from Pittsburgh in Clearfield County and on the Susquehanna River. As you are about to hear, William Penn himself had a hand in the establishment of this small 2,000 to 3,000 population. Our hometown hero can trace his family's business, Gates Hardware Store, serving the community of Curwensville with its growing needs for over 140 years on Filbert Street in Curwensville. But before we get into our interview with Harry Jefferson Gates, our hometown hero, first meet Hildred Rolls, owner of the Strawberry Tree gift shop and tea room in Curwensville, who is also an historian of Curwensville history.
My name is Hildred Rolls, and I live here in Curwensville. I have been the president of the local historical society and had the opportunity to meet some of the folks who trace the lineage of John Curwen, for whom Curwensville is named. John Curwen was originally from Workington, England. It's on the British-Scottish borderlands of northern England on the west coast. The family were minor noblemen, lords of the manor in Workington, and depending on, as the history of northern England goes, whoever had the strongest power concerned, the noble family continuously switched sides between Scotland and England, depending on who was winning at the time. At the time of the settlement of Pennsylvania, under William Penn and Admiral Penn, his father, the Curwen family were loyal to the British and the English. And John Curwen Sr. Was friends with Admiral Penn, who was Lord Admiral of the English Navy. He loaned Penn a large sum of money to rebuild the English Navy after it had been destroyed. And so, in repayment, Admiral Penn, through William, gave Curwen a land grant in Penn's new colony. And so, the Curwen family came to the new colony with William Penn in the first immigration of the Quakers into Pennsylvania. Penn, as you are well aware, settled southeastern Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and the part of the payment was in the second purchase of the colony from the Delaware Indian. And so Penn was granted to Curwen a sum of 356 acres in the second purchase on the west branch of the Susquehanna. And so here we are today. The land that had originally been surveyed was surveyed by the New Holland Company, which was a Dutch concern that Penn had used to survey most of Pennsylvania west. It was also the New Holland Company who had settled New York or New Amsterdam at the time. And so they quickly subdivided the land here in western Pennsylvania. The land itself was not settled until after the French and Indian War. The colony did not expand west of Harrisburg at the confluence at Sunbury, where into this second purchase, and until after the French and Indian War. During the French and Indian War, the British had come from Sunbury up to the mouth of Clearfield Creek. The Curwen family never came and settled the area. Right before the American Revolution, they sold the property to William Irvin. They were munitions manufacturers for the Revolutionary War. And so they accumulated a great deal of wealth. John and William Irvin were given the Curwen land grant by their father. And so the William Irvin brothers, William and John, came over the mountain into the valley in 1818 to make their fortunes. They cut the white pine and the hemlock timber that was abundant here. And they were the first to send coal arcs down the river. They cut and squared timber, and they were shipping more than 3 million board feet of timber down the river every spring. This house that you're sitting in was built by Abram Gates. There were two brothers. Solomon was one of the brothers. He lived here in this house. We bought this building in 2008. So we've been in business here now for 10 years. We only serve lunch, 3 seatings a day, and it's basically for our customers, but we have people making reservations from as far as 100 miles away.
Yeah, I know.
And so we've served folks from 48 of the 50 states. We've served folks internationally who have come to visit.
It's time to meet our hometown hero, Harry Jefferson Gates. The Gates family, through many generations, has contributed to the building and supporting of the town of Curwensville.
My name is, full name is Harry Jefferson Gates. I go by Jeff Gates. We're at Gates Hardware. I'm the 5th generation at Gates Hardware. We've been here since 1877. I feel very proud of that for a lot of years. Even though my father and grandfather have been gone for 30 to 36 years, I'm still working for them. Being a part of a small community, your customers are your family also. At least I feel that way. Their needs and their wants and of course are important to us, and service is what it's all about. Whether it's a small business like ours or a large business, service is everything. Knowing your product, just like is our job to do. So when that person does come in, you want to not only fill their needs and wants, but satisfy what they want. And Gates Hardware evolved as the first generation was a gentleman named Solomon Jefferson Gates. Now, he was the first generation. And that's back in the 1860s. He was a farrier, a blacksmith. Right beside us is where the first Gates Hardware was. About 20 years ago, I tore that building down. There was multiple buildings there I tore down, but that was where the first Gates Hardware was. They built onto that blacksmith shop and started their hardware right there. So Solomon Jefferson was number 1. William D. was the second, and Harry G. was my grandfather, Harry Gifford, and James K. James Kirkwood was my dad, and I'm Harry Jefferson. And from then, we had 5 stores. Not only Curwensville, we had Grampian, Westover, Osceola Mills, and then East End and Clearfield. Then the Depression hit, and those things sort of scaled down, so to speak. I remember my grandfather saying that there was 2 depressions, one at the end of the 1800s and, of course, the 30s. Top picture is the original hardware store. As you see, there's a cook stove, and then my grandfather in those pictures with the neighborhood kids. This was my great-grandfather, and that was actually my grandfather right there. The second shot here is of the original hardware. It opened in 22. Granddad is in the center of the picture. As you notice to the left there's the Philco radios, and then to the right you see the cook stoves with the brass wash boilers. And if you really look back by the steps, and I'll point it out to you, those are Model T tires. And the next picture down, that was what again the original hardware was. They have plow machinery and things like that. We're pretty much a typical hardware store. We're known for our growing up in the hardware business. Not only we do specialize in certain things like glass cutting, screen repair. We're a steel dealership. Also, we've done small engine repair. Lawn and garden equipment. We're into sporting goods, hunting, fishing, camping, small appliances. Since the 80s, we've probably doubled, tripled our size over the years, and that's just keeping up with the times. Not only from the original store and then to our 2 to 3 expansions since then. But keeping that older look with the hardwood floors, the older wainscoting we put in our offices, and as far as but again, it comes down to service, of course, too.
Thank you.
Get something up here. This is how we do it. Yeah. But all the cabinet stuff that we have were handmade. And the quality that's there. Before, we put slat board, which is a newer side of pegboard. Took everything out of there and then integrated the slat board and to the older look. This is the original part of the hardware here. Again, this was built in 22. All those cabinets that's over there, and this is how you adapt to the times. Back years ago, everything was on tables, and of course we go into pegboard to slat board to keep up with the times. But integrating the old with the new. And being a small community, you hear everything, whether it's a social problem or a medical problem to whatever they need that day, whether it's a gallon of paint or just to say hello. But that's what being a small business is all about. Yeah. Throughout the first pitch this year at the Little League, I felt very honored. We probably the last 30, 40 years we sponsored a Little League team. We support the football and the basketball and the soccer, baseball teams in the area, let alone the churches and the fire company. Gosh, you got to support your local fire company and the police department. That's the heart of the community, along with your churches. That's your hearts of the community, of course. Industries do look in our area, whether it's the Clearfield, Curwensville, Grampian area, is our work ethic. Our people around here are hard workers, and the quality of work, and we believe in our work ethic. Back years ago, this is how they used to sell screws and bolts and things like this, where they had multiple ones of these type of fixtures, and for space and everything else, all that was is like this would be a size 2 1/4 by 14 thickness. Now, they haven't made a size 13 in I don't know how many years, but those are sizes. There were a lot of different sizes. Morse stoves was a cook stove that everybody had in their kitchen. Monarch was another one. And I believe I probably sold the last, back in the 70s, last Monarch stove, and it took about 5 or 6 of us just to get it in the door. But I was the last one to sell the last cook stove to a lady in Merrill Springs. That's one of the original regular clocks that was in the main office of the store.
Going back to what year do you think?
We're back in the 20s and the 30s. When we moved the offices and changed into our new offices, this was one of the panels, glass panels, and I just couldn't throw that away. So this was all, again, hardware stores sold dynamite and of course carbide. They use it for the miners' lamps. But all the miners had carbide lamps to work in. Anybody who's had a little bit of history, Syracuse turned into John Deere Syracuse, and turned to John Deere, and then the John Deere we have today.
W.D. Gates, dealer in harness, hardware, and vehicles.
Harness was the blacksmith part. This is a match for your matches by your cook stove. This is a pie turner for your cook stove, and that turned the pies. This is something we put out. Well, today we'll do 20 to 25 circulars a year. Back then, of course, the newspaper was just coming around. But in my younger years, I went around town and put these in the mailboxes, and then those went to the newspaper. These were of my great uncles. Now, I was about 5 years old. He passed away when he's like 95. But he was a plumber. Now, these are a pair of tin snips that he used, which I still use today. I've never had to sharpen them, but his name was Jefferson Clyde Gates. And the Whisk Company might want these back because there'll never be a better pair made than today, in even today's world. Yeah, better steel. I'm fortunate to have been in a small business. Doing the 70, 80 hours a week, people ask me, how can you do that? Says, after a while you sort of get used to it, and it's part of your everyday life. Going home sometimes, give me a call on the phone. You just left there after 14 hours and you got to go back to make sure Joe gets his key for his lock or whatever. That's just been part of my life. Or if I'm out cutting grass, or just started the mower to cut the grass, I want to say, hey Jeff, can you get me a bolt? And I said, all right, that's no problem. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, thank you for being with us on Hometowns and Heroes. I hope you enjoyed the show just as much as we enjoyed putting it together for you. And if you have a hero in your hometown, please let us know about him, her, or them, and we'll see what we can do. Until then, let's make this world a better place.
Join us again next time to hear another inspiring story featuring our next hometown hero. If you have a hero in your hometown, let us give them a hand.